Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Hey, Chrissy. You know what? Usually I don't title the podcasts before the interviews, but for yours, for whatever reason, I got inspired and I titled your podcast, It's All in the Team Awesome Sauce.
Oh, love it.
I love it too, but I want you to know it's your podcast. So you are open to talk about anything you'd like. But I know the last time we had a conversation, I was really intrigued by Team Awesome Sauce. And I'm sure what you have to share about that is going to help anybody. And if anything, I'm totally selfish. It's going to help me.
I love talking about Team Awesome Sauce. So
Yeah, there's that, and you wanna talk about your book coming out as well.
yeah,
So let's dive in. Talk about small steps that you had that shaped who you are now and, things that you've done, whatever you care to share that would bring you to where we can just continue the conversation.
yeah, I would say some of the small steps are just, making the decision to be resilient, taking every step forward. We can't always plan what life has to throw at us. So being consistent is really important. Being intentional is really important. So I pick a word for every year. And so when I
Mm,
first started with it, it was present. So I wanted to be present and show up because being extremely introverted and like over the last decade and getting over that fear and anxiety and being more out there. So I had present, and then the next year I had balance, then I had rise, and then it just kind of continued with the momentum. This year my word has been momentum, and then halfway through the year I realized I needed another word, consistency. So it's not just
mm.
about the volume and the velocity at which we're going, it's how consistent can we be so we don't wind up being a hot mess express. So,
I love it. I love the word
yeah,
for the year. I never thought about that. I am definitely we're into oh my goodness, we're approaching the what? Last quarter of the year
absolutely.
already. This time has flown. So I love that intentional words. I
Love
love
it.
it.
I absolutely love it. Having
I
that word,
love it.
it's been helpful for me, especially in the last few years. Like intentional was
Mhm.
a word that I had in 2021. So rise was in 20, no, brave was in 2020. And
Mm,
I picked it before everything happened in 2020, which was really interesting. And then
wow.
rise and intentional were really important for 2021. And then 2022 was radiate. So it's just, yeah, building on the structure that you have. So I would say those small steps are just really trying to work to be consistent.
Mhm. And for that word, I'm curious that now, do you keep that on your desk somewhere? You see that every day? Do you write out like the action steps of how that word plays out in your life? How do you take that overarching word and then put it into practical application so that you keep it at the forefront so that you are intentional and then you want to move it forward? What does
So a
that look
lot of
like for
it,
you?
yeah, accountability. So saying my word to other people, saying, this is the word that I picked for the year. So posting it not just on LinkedIn or in social media, but also, having that conversation with my husband, co-captain of Team Awesome Sauce, Steve. This is the word that I'm picking. This is what's going on. And then, sharing it with my team, sharing it with my friends, sharing it with the accountability groups that I'm in, the masterminds I'm in. This is what I'm working on. Just kind of set that intention for the year. And then, as you speak it into the universe, of course, it continues to manifest. So with
What you
picking the
focused
word,
on expands.
absolutely. And that's it. It's just really taking that time and just pushing it out as much as you can. And then there's always that reminder. So as I'm meditating, as I'm thinking about what my focus is for the week or for the year, really making sure that that plays in the background.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, that's awesome. I love it. So Team Awesome Sauce.
Yes.
You wanna unpack Team Awesome Sauce since you mentioned it.
Sure. So, Team Awesome Sauce is four people with three different last names, two parents, a mom who does organizational development, builds businesses for a living, and a dad who's played team sports. You get a team name, a team logo, a set of core values, a purpose statement, motto, and mission. Our purpose statement is we radiate awesome to the world. Our mission is we provide love and help to one another and a strong belief in each other. using our times, talents, and treasures to make the world a better place and enjoy living our awesome sauce life. Our motto is put more awesome in the sauce. And then our core values spell out Team Awesome Sauce. Because when you're dealing with kids, right now, Maddie is 15, Caleb's 11. I mean, you need more than just like four core values. So, I mean, businesses are like, we need 4 to 8. I'm like, no, we need to spell out all of Team Awesome Sauce so that can give us all of the things that we need to do for the rest of our lives. So,
Oh, love it. I
yeah,
love it. And how have the kids embraced this?
it's just been a natural part of who we are. So, I mean, our
Okay.
transition story. So, while we started out as a quote unquote blended family, we're now, I mean, we're a core four. So, building that relationship and kind of when Steve and I decided we were going to get married and knowing that we were going to have, I mean, I have 2 kids. They're now our kids because he's legally adopted them in 2020. So, I mean, it's our team, it's our family. But coming from a family that was already established, kind of building that was his purpose was very intentional around, who are we as a family? Who do we want to be? How do we want to live? Not just to set us up for success in the past, but also to set us up for success in the future.
Yeah, blended families can be challenging. So it sounds like that intentionality definitely shines through in the fact that everything that you've outlined
Yeah.
is just so yeah, intentional.
Mhm.
I like, do you put that out there for people to, kind of look at as your like you this is your example and this is what you have and help other families too?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that we've started sharing. I would say we started sharing it at the very beginning of our family journey when we knew that we were going to be together forever. But then really that brand of, this is who we are and we live a resilient life, we live an intentional life, and again, being able to radiate awesome to the world, building that purpose statement. I mean, initially when we did it, it was, we just needed to have a team name so we could all like kind of rally around. Cause I mean, Myers Johnston Bunch was not something that was easy to roll off the tongue. So what can we do? Team Awesome Sauce. So it made it easy. And then of course we had t-shirts as a family, and it's just the cute things that you do to kind of build your culture and building culture in a family. I know I've gotten feedback from someone in another organization that I'm in, and she was, I think, starting to try to be snarky about it. And she's like, "Oh, you run your family like a business." I'm like, "No, we run our businesses like families." So we start with the intention of who we are and what we do and how we do it. And it's the foundation for not just our family dynamics, but how we really live our lives. So if we're at the bedrock of who we are, it's important and key. And I think it makes for a smoother transition in life as things come at you. Okay, when things are difficult, A stands for always strive to level up. So we know we're always going to keep working. We do hard things is another core value that we have. So working to continue to grow. And then we have a framework for how we make financial and business decisions. It's like a 6-step framework. So if we're going to make a big decision as to whether we're going to invest in something, start a new business, move in a different direction, serve in the community, we make sure that we're making the decisions based on our framework.
Wow, a lot of intentionality I hear there. It's wonderful. And I would imagine that when those storms of life do come, the fact that you have built such a strong, solid foundation allows your family to weather whatever it is thrown at you guys.
I think it
So,
helps. I mean, I'm going to be
I'm
honest.
sure.
There are moments that we make it up as we go along too, just like everybody else. But I think that it's an anchor that
Mhm,
some families don't necessarily have, or they don't realize that they have because they haven't put it into true words. So I mean, for
mhm.
me, I love organization. So it really helps me to kind of move forward through life and going, okay, if we're going to make a decision, what are the 6 things that it has to check in boxes so we can make sure that we've made the decision. And it's always a team decision. We work together. I mean, Steve and I do as husband and wife, but then also with the kiddos. I mean, if there's something that's going to impact us significantly, it has to be a full team decision, full team support.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, not only that, you're teaching these kids life skills that this is stuff that is not found in schools. So I'm excited for your kids. What's one thing that you thought would be hard about blending your families and doing what you're doing, but turned out it really wasn't? And what's something that you thought would be easy but wound up being challenging for you?
Oh, that's a good question too. So thought was going to be challenging. I would say it was, just the rhythm of life. How is it all going to work out? Because you had Steve, I mean, well, kind of, let's back up. So, married my high school sweetheart, had two beautiful children, Maddie and Caleb, and lost my husband to mental illness a decade ago. And so then met Steve and realized this is my soulmate. This is the person who was intended for me. Decide to get married, but of course he is never older in life, never had kids, never had a family, partly because of some of the things that he experienced growing up. Was always worried about, what does it look like, and then jumps into relationship and let's get married and let's, in essence, instant family. So part of me, my concern was the rhythm of life. How are we going to manage some of the things that, as someone who'd been single for over 40 years of their life, jumping into, we got to get kids we got to get kids to school, we got to get kids to dance, we got to get kids to karate, like all of those things. How does that kind of blend? At the same time, I'm building relationships in the community, getting really involved, getting ready to acquire a business. So how do we balance all of that? So that was probably my biggest concern, is how do we manage all the time? Which really fits into my personality of, I'm always, how do we put everything in order? And his was more, how do we set the intention so that we're always moving forward with positivity and securing, like, just being, I say being intentional, but being purposeful in who we are. So kind of how we, again, balance each other out. Something that I didn't expect that we're dealing with is that, grief comes in waves. And so the loss of first husband for me was impacted at the very, I mean, clearly at the beginning of everything going on now. So kind of working through some delayed grief with our kids. That's something that I know I had been told would happen, but I was kind of like, yeah, we're living intentionally. We're doing everything that we need to do.
You're
I don't
team
think
awesome sauce.
it's awesome thoughts. We're not going to have to deal with
Yeah.
it. Oh no, we still do. So that's probably,
Um,
if I'm being vulnerable, that's what we're dealing with right now. I mean, as our kids continue to get older, Caleb's in 6th grade, Maddie's in 10th grade. So it's kind of just working through some of those things and the rhythms and continuing to find where we are in space as a family as we continue to vibrate up the spiral. I mean, we're continuing to level up. It's one of our core values, always strive to level up. So as we're doing that, what does it look like for us as a family? What do we look like as a couple? And then what do we look like as parents? And then as the greater team awesome sauce. So.
you mentioned about building businesses. Can you talk a little bit about your journey
Mhm.
of what you do and how you got here today?
Yeah, so we have several businesses. I mean, the primary one at this point is called AUI, Associated Underwriters Insurance, third generation family business. So grew up in that business. It was, if you want a car, you'll work for us. If you want to pay for college, you'll work for us. And so I did. And then at one point in time, continued through working with my parents, bought the business in 2019. There's a lot of things to unpack there. And then in 2019, as soon as I bought AUI, had the opportunity to launch a small business, another small business, so fractional HR consulting. So AUI is employee benefits, individual health insurance. Clarity HR, which is the startup, is small business human resources. It's a fractional service for organizations that do not have, do not want, or do not need a full-time HR person. So
Mm.
started scaling that business. In 2020, my husband and I decided that we needed to diversify our income. So like a lot of people, sitting, trying to figure out what's next and what could happen with the world, realized we needed to do some additional investing. And so started investing in some real estate syndications, have gotten involved in a general partnership and also some small business investing. So from startup to scale up to multifamily, industrial, I think we're in every asset class right now. Again,
Mhm.
diversification.
Sure.
I'm born into the assurance industry, so we mitigate and spread risk around. So that's to some extent what we've done.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, that's for sure. What do you enjoy the most about what you do?
I love to just put things in order. So it's not necessarily about the specific business. Sometimes it's about how to help. So with different organizations that we work with in the small business space, because the bulk of what we do in AUI and Clarity is small business consulting. It's, do you have a problem? Is there something that I can connect you with? Or if I can put things in order, I am super happy. So there was a conversation I had in a leadership organization probably about 8 years ago. I said, if you had to do something, pick something new, what would you do? And so since then, I've always said, if I had to quit, if everything was gone and I had to start my life over again in career, I would be a professional closet organizer because I love to put things in order. And I realized at the end of last year, because I'm working in another organization right now doing some help with them as their interim CEO. I realized that it's not just putting things in order. I do it now with businesses. I put businesses in order. I put systems in order, whether it is on the for-profit side or if it's volunteering in the nonprofit side doing board service. It's all about, how do we find order and process? And it makes sense from Team Awesome Sauce to our purpose statement at AUI and Clarity HR is we provide peace of mind by simplifying the complicated. It's just very simple as to, that's who I am and that's what I do.
That's your common thread that
It is.
runs through everything.
It is.
It's funny you should mention what you would have done if you weren't doing what you're doing right now, that you'd be a professional closet organizer,
Mhm.
and I probably would have answered that the same way because I love going in and making order out of chaos. There's
Yeah.
something very satisfying about helping somebody,
Mhm.
get to that place of equilibrium that they can't do on their own.
Yeah.
And you come in and you do what you need to do and you help them to maintain their equilibrium. Maybe they
Mhm.
just couldn't see it in the first place. And then, then you come in, you help, and then you leave. And that's what closet organization is. You come in, you look, and all that stuff is not going to sit in a pile on the floor. And we're gonna take this and we're gonna make order out of the chaos. I think that's great. What's one of the challenges then that you have with running so many different businesses and you have real estate? What are some of the challenges that you have and how do you mitigate those?
I think some of it is, I mean, like anybody, it's time. How do you balance the things that make you money, the things that give you a good feeling and kind of help advance the community, and then how do you still? For me, it's take time to be wife and mom. So balancing all of those things. Also, as you scale, you realize that you cannot rely completely on yourself. You have to rely on other people. So building and empowering individuals to make decisions that will be similar to decisions that you will make, not having to have control over everything. I would say that's probably been one of the challenges that I've had to really lean into in the last year and a half. I am extremely driven and I will probably outwork 90% of the people on the planet. I can't do everything all the time. So
Mhm.
that's the biggest challenge for me is recognizing that I can't do it all and how do I delegate effectively and not worry about the delegation. Because
Mm.
once I give it, I don't want it back, but I will worry about it. So it's not the micromanaging, it's the micromanaging inside Chrissy's head of how do we that
I
person's
was
going to do what I ask them to do. If they don't do it, then we'll fix it. But how do we not have noise around that? It's probably my
Yeah, how do you do that? Because being the type of person that you are, how do you let that go? Because I know there's a lot of us out there who would probably say they're control freaks and they want and I
uh-huh.
I fall under that category because I want to do it all myself too because I'm of the belief that, no one can do it as well as I can. So
Mhm.
I'm just going to go do it anyway. What are some of the life hacks that you've used to help you get to the place where, okay, I know I can do this, but I got to let this go?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm going to say that I am not perfect at it. I fail at it constantly, but I'm a work in progress. So, couple of things. Some I probably wouldn't recommend, but they've worked for me. If you are so busy that you absolutely cannot do everything, it makes it pretty pretty easy to hand some things off. So, forced delegation. The other part is really working on the understanding and the visualization around, what do I want my ideal life to look like? And if I want it to be that, I cannot hang on to all of these things over here. I
Mhm.
have to hold them with an open hand. And I think that as you continue through that practice, it gets easier. I remember a couple years ago, Steve and I we take walks around the neighborhood. And for a period of time, that was date night. So we're taking a walk. He's going, "What are you working on?" I said, "I'm watching someone in my organization solve a problem." And he's like, "You know what the answer is. Why don't you just do it?" I'm like, "Because if I do it, I will never be able to leave the way that I want to. I will never be able to do the other things that I think are important. Like one of the things that I'm working on right now is finishing up a book that should launch at the end of this year. I couldn't do the things that I want to do with the book, with speaking, with teaching, if I'm constantly in this organization always handling this activity. And so he's like, okay, so how are you gonna manage some of this? I said, well, I'm gonna talk to you about it because it's driving me crazy that I can't fix it. And I'm going to talk to other people in my network that have dealt with the same thing. So finding other individuals, other business owners who are at the same scale or larger than you, who deal with similar problems, and hey, how have you dealt with this? Or how are you handling this is really important because it gives you some accountability, but it also gives you perspective and knowing that I am not alone, because a lot of times business ownership is lonely, especially when you have employees, because you have wonderful relationships with those individuals as members of your team. But if they're not in ownership, they don't understand the same weight and they don't understand the same balance of what you have. So finding other business owners that can share that perspective with you is really important as you continue to grow.
Wow. You brought up a couple of really cool points out of your story, which I appreciate. One of them was the person who is trying to solve that problem, and your husband said, "Oh, well, you already know how to solve that, but you chose not to." And I think that's just beautiful leadership, because if you went and you solved that problem for them, then you rob them of the opportunity to grow in
Yeah,
their ability. And you also, at least, and you correct me if I'm wrong, if you go and you do it for them, then it also plays with their confidence as well. So that when the opportunity comes up in the future for them to take on something else, they're going to second guess themselves because they didn't solve that problem. You had to come in and solve it for them. So I think it's good to let people struggle. And we live in this culture where we're taught that failure is not an option and failure is not a good thing, but failure and struggle is, that's where the opportunities lie. That's where the growth lies, is if you know how to take failure and struggle and turn it around into something that's positive. And the other thing you talked about was having people around you. That business ownership can be lonely, and it takes, how many people are out there are just wandering around by themselves because they're too proud to ask for help. But in order to run a business, you recognize, hey, I can go out and go, seek other people that are like me, and there's strength in numbers. So I love that you shared both of those things. I think that's great.
absolutely. And I would say,
Talk.
as you, again, continuing to grow, giving your managers or the individuals who are going to take your place, giving them the opportunity to lead. Because if you don't, they're never going to be able to excel at the level that you need them to. You're always going to hold them back. And so it's really important that you give them opportunities to lead and you get out of the way. But
Yeah.
I'm not perfect at that. I'm working on it. But I think also too, it's just acknowledging that as a business owner that sometimes, you've got to check your ego at the door. Yes, you may have built it. Yes, you may have sustained it. But if you want someone else to help you grow it, you have to give them opportunities.
Mhm. What are some of the ways that your organizations pick people to go in the right spots? Talk a little bit about what that looks like in what you do.
So I haven't met an assessment that I don't like yet. I may not always like the results of a management assessment or leadership assessment, but I always like to know who I am and where I tick. So for our organization, we use Clifton Strengths Finder. It's been really helpful. I like that it is not about what you're not good at. It's about what you excel at and what you're naturally gifted in, so that we can put you in a position or at least know how to interact. So the other thing that I would say is, as individuals get more comfortable within our organization, it's where do you want to go? Because for me, if you are a culture fit, if you're a people fit, if you're a skills fit, this organization is going we're going to continue to grow. And where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself in leadership? If you see yourself in leadership, then let's work on building those emotional intelligence and interpersonal effectiveness skills, because it's more important that you know how to talk to people than that you know all the right answers. If you are wanting to be in client relationships and you always want to live in the work, then let's figure out where you need to be in client relationship and success work so that we can make you more successful in the type of individual that you want to be. So
It's great.
yeah,
Thanks about that. I like the personality test too. I mean, just for sheer fact that if you don't really understand who you are as a person, go take a test,
yeah,
because they reveal so much. And like you said, sometimes you don't like the results, but
no.
the results are helpful.
Well, I
But
know when we first started doing it, it was more about how does everyone work with Chrissy, or how does everyone understand Chrissy, because it just makes it easier. So when
mhm,
I started doing some of these assessments, it was okay. I did it through a leadership organization when we first started using StrengthsFinder in within our company. And this was very helpful for me in understanding who I am and also
mhm,
understanding how I work. I should probably share this with the individuals that I manage. And they're like,
mhm,
oh, that explains you so much better. And now we understand when I'm working in my strengths, this is who I am. If I'm working in the basement of my strengths, this is where I can tend to be. And so it enables them to kind of look at, okay, where Chrissy's stress level is, what's going on with her.
mhm.
If we can kind of manage around our leader at the same time, how do we
Mhm.
continue to grow?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I believe in them. I think every kid that graduates from high school should have some kind of personal assessment done before they leave.
Oh yeah.
I don't understand that is just not something that is common within the school system, and everybody can benefit. I would have been a different person had I understood who I was when I was 17 and going out. So maybe that'll make that a mission at some point. Talk a little bit about your book. I'm excited about that. When is it coming out? What made you decide to write it? What's it about?
Yeah. So end of the year. I don't have a complete. We don't have a published date yet. I'm getting the book back this week, so it should have like this week is September. So hopefully October, November is when it should be coming out. So as soon as I know for sure, I'll let you know, Stu, so you can update the show notes.
Absolutely.
But called Reluctant Resilience. So started writing it in 2020 as a call to action for small business owners and looking at, it's not just about the what you do, it's about the what else. So finding your what else for your business, which is what drives us to move forward. So for my organizations, we believe that serving the community is just as important as doing business in the community. So having philanthropy in your business. And so started with that purpose of writing about philanthropy in our business, and then really migrated into this concept of reluctant resilience. So what are the things that have made me the business owner that I am now, the person that I am today? And it's not necessarily the things that I ran towards, it's the things that I had to deal with because they happened to me. So a lot of times in business and just in our personal lives or professional lives, we are not always resilient because we want to be. We're resilient because we have to be. So, for those of us who go kicking and screaming through personal growth, this is for you. How to transition a family business, how to blend, how blending a family can change things, how going through major changes within the economy and within an organization can help you grow both as a business leader and as a person, making sure that you pay attention to yourself and taking care of yourself through through growth, having a fixed versus a flexible mindset. So it's almost like a series of conversations where if we were at brunch and you would say, hey, how did you handle this? Or what's your thought on what's your thought on philanthropy in your business? What's your thought on how to manage your time? How do you work on not getting overwhelmed? You're like, oh, well, let me talk to you about how I thought I was Superwoman and I almost burnt my house down because I wasn't paying attention when something emotional hit me and then I got distracted. So it's all about just kind of life lessons in kind of continuing to grow as a person. I don't have it all figured out, but here's a couple of things lessons I've learned that I'm sure will resonate with some people. And that's it. It's almost like it's a hug for small business owners. Like we all got it. We can handle it. We can keep moving.
It sounds like it's a hug for everybody.
I
Did
think it
your
could be.
I think so. I read your book, and I'm not a small business owner. I feel like, I think all of us need a hug at some point. I think all of us could really use a reality check from time to time because we look at people on the outside and think, wow, they've got it all together. And I don't seem to have it all together. But in reality, all of us, nobody has it all together. We're
Yeah.
just in this, we're just in this world all together. And if we had a little bit more compassion for one another, I think it would be a totally different place. For your book, did it evolve over time when you started writing it?
Oh, absolutely. It completely evolved. So initially I thought it was going to be a how-to, and then it's really become more of a series of conversations. So, and again, that whole I don't have it all figured out, and being able to be vulnerable, because you can look at things from the outside and go, oh, she runs 3 businesses, oh, she does all these things in the community, it looks like she's got her family has a mission statement and core values, everything's got to be working perfectly. Oh my gosh, no, it's not. We are a crap show half the time. And so it's just really being honest and intentional and going, okay, these are the things that I struggle with. But then at the same time, when someone's like, how did you get here? So for you to see where I am now, it's where that iceberg, see the photo of
Hmm.
the iceberg
Hmm.
where you see the top, but you never see what's underneath. It's kind of that glimpse into, hey, this is some of the things that have happened in my underneath. I mean, transitioning a family business is not for the faint of heart. And if you think that everything is going to go smoothly, you are lying to yourself. I mean, there were moments in time where my mom and I are screaming in the driveway at each other, and that's not pretty, but it's part of what happens. And so I think giving some of that acknowledgement and going, there's no way, that's a Lifetime movie. No one ever acts like that. Oh, yes, they do,
Hmm.
all the time. And it's kind of just making sure that people know, it's not always perfect. We're not always going to transition easily. And there's challenges, but those challenges that start at the beginning of your life, or challenges, if you can achieve and get through them, are going to continue to be lessons for you as you continue to grow. So it's really just looking at life as a series of lessons that we have to learn. And for me, it's, could I please learn this lesson now so I don't have to learn it later?
Hmm. Yeah. What's your framework then for challenges?
What do you mean? Like, how do I handle
So,
challenges?
yeah, yeah, so you got those challenges. I know we were kinda talking about that, but now I'm thinking it's like, okay, someone, the crap hit the fan today. What's your first response?
Oh, it just really depends. I will
Fair
say
enough.
part of it is acknowledging it. Like, there's, for someone to say, like, I grew up in a family where it was show no weakness. And I learned over the course of my life, especially in the last 15 years, that show no weakness, while it may be wonderful for everybody else on the outside, it killed me on the inside. And
Mm,
so acknowledging who I am and being real to say, you know what, this was difficult. I mean, I dealt with a spouse that had a severe mental illness. And so that was difficult, but nobody knew it. Nobody knew it until it
mhm,
was gone. And so that was, what did that serve? That siloed me. It left me alone and dealing with some things that I could have probably had a support system around. Same thing with
yeah,
transitioning in business. Talking to my team during COVID initially was like, okay, everything's going to be fine. And then it was like, you know what, guys, I don't know what's going to happen. I can't tell you what the answer is going to be. I can't tell you what 6 weeks is going to look like. I can't tell you what 6 days is going to look like at the very beginning of all of this, because we didn't really know. And as a business owner in COVID, that was difficult. But what prepared me for that was when we dealt with the Affordable Care Act in 2013, when our business literally, and the insurance industry, was flipped over overnight.
mm,
I mean, how we got compensated changed, how we were licensed to some degree changed. We had a new place called the Marketplace that nobody knew it was going to work or how it was going to work, but it was a government website and it was going to go live on October 1st of 2013. So I lost my first husband on August 31st of 2013. We went live with healthcare October 1st of 2013. So that's a
wow,
huge, I mean, all of the things that happen, knowing that life happens in the margin. I will say that, if for me, one of the most important things that I've ever done in building my interpersonal effectiveness skills was really going to therapy, challenging my grief, but also going to therapy when my mom and I were transitioning the family business, because my dad had passed in 16. We were working on trying to move through the business and transition. In 19 was when we sold, and it changed hands. But really working through some of those things in the stages of grief and how we're going to negotiate transitioning family members out of the
mm,
business, it was a challenge. And
I
so
bet.
going to therapy enabled me how it gave me tools and to how to talk to my mom, but then also transcended into so many other things: how to talk to employees, how to talk to members in the community, how to talk to my spouse, how to talk to, I mean, friends and other family members. It empowered and enabled me to kind of continue to grow and move towards the better version of who I am now. And I'm continuing to. I'm a work in progress too. I am
Yeah.
far from perfect, but I feel like I can at least continue to grow in a positive way.
Mhm. Did you eventually shed that belief of show no weakness? And did that allow you to be more authentic, or do you still hold on to some of that?
Oh, heck yeah. I think there's moments, depending on what situation I'm in, where show no weakness is a requirement. I mean,
Oh,
there's
yeah,
certain
you
moves
lead a
you have to
business.
do. You got to have it. But
Mhm,
for the most part, when people are like, how do you do it? It's like, oh my gosh, it's not perfect. It's messy. And the sooner that you can acknowledge that it is going to be messy and you are not going to know what you're doing and you're going to be scared half the time, the better you will be, because you'll, I mean, I'm not going to say that I don't sit up and worry. I still have anxiety. I still have some of those issues that I continue to work through. And my gosh, I gave myself an ulcer in fourth grade. So, I mean, it's continuing to kind of grow and be who I am. But I would say showing no weakness now, it's really just being real in who I am. When people are like, how do you do all of this? It's like, oh, it's not show no weakness. It's being calm through chaos is probably
mhm,
the new way I would
mhm.
verbalize it.
Okay. What are some of the things you do for stress to kinda
Good question. A lot of different things. So, and I'm sure that there's people. So here, I have Play-Doh on my desk. So we're on the camera now. So I mean, occasionally when things get really stressful and I'm in a
Mhm,
meeting, no one can see my hands. So I mean, I'll be moving because I'm anxious. I work out, so I have a pretty aggressive routine of staying consistent physically because that helps with, I mean,
mhm,
neurochemical. What else do I do? I still go to therapy. I think it's really important, not just to talk. I mean, it's not that I'm addressing all these things that are traumatic in my life. Sometimes it is having conversations around, I've got to have a difficult conversation at work. I got to have a difficult community conversation. How do I kind of role play through that? So I have someone that I work with who is very skills based. It is not just let's talk about our feelings, because that for me is not, it's helpful, but it's
mhm,
not practical. I need something that gives me practical tips. So continuing to go to therapy, continuing to read, meditation's very helpful, being mindful in movement. There's all sorts of different things. And then there's the little there's the, like, you can color, you can, like, all those little
yeah.
activities, like,
All
oh,
those little life hacks.
yeah, all
Yeah,
those,
you could
that's stupid. I'm like, no, it's actually, it works. And
you
if it
know
doesn't
what?
work, that's fine.
Yeah,
But
I mean, you bring up good points, like, there's so many different things that people can do that we downplay and think are silly, like the Play-Doh example. Well, how many of us, when we do get nervous, our hands need to be fidgeting on
Mhm,
something? And for those people who are tactile, that can be a really big stress releaser for
mhm,
them. And exercise, we all know the benefits of exercise. I think you you bring up a good point that you have to find what works for you.
mhm,
And what works for you might not work for somebody else. And if it doesn't work for you, keep trying because there's definitely something out there
yeah.
that you can do. So thank you for sharing all this. What's something that you wanted to talk about that maybe I didn't get a chance to ask?
Um, let me think for a second. I would say we talked a little bit about it, but it's something that I'm really passionate about, which is really philanthropy in your business and finding your what else. And I think part of it is, as business owners, it's really easy to sometimes just write a check. So, you know what? I'll just write a check to an organization and then that'll make me feel good. That's checking that box. And I want to challenge business owners to lean into what philanthropy and service looks like, especially when it comes to time. So it's what is of more value of you when you're giving back. Is it treasure? Is it really monetary? Or is it time? And for those individuals who run organizations who have a really strong skill set in a specific thing, I would challenge them to give up their time, because nonprofits need assistance in board service. There are organizations that do not know how to run because they don't have the same level of business acumen that a lot of times business professionals and for profit have. That's not necessarily the case in all nonprofit, but in small fledgling nonprofit, when you've got someone who is very tied to mission, they may need help in finance, they may need help in marketing. So teaching and helping and guiding and advising is really important at that level. And then as you continue to scale your business, you have employees working in nonprofits that also have employees, because it's giving them the opportunity to really learn from you and you learn from them. So that's something that I tend to be really passionate about, finding an organization, and then building that spirit of philanthropy within your organization. So it's not just about what Chrissy thinks and what Chrissy wants to give back to at AUI and Clarity. It's what do Chrissy's team members want to do? So, I mean, we have some very specific initiatives that are employee led. So we sponsor the All-American Soapbox Derby. So believing in STEM education is something that's really important in our area, as well as we partner with an organization called Rebuilding Together. So they help individuals stay in their homes, and then also empower women. It's a program called She Builds, empower women by teaching them how to do basic home repairs in their homes, because home ownership and repairs within a home are one of the leading costs or drivers into poverty or financial stress for women, because they don't know how to do some of those basic repairs, whether it's plumbing or electrical in their home, or they don't know even how to vet a contractor. So teaching them how to do those things empowers them, makes them feel more comfortable, enables them to make better decisions around what they need to do to keep their home, running. So
Oh,
that's something
that's
that's
nice.
important. Yeah.
How does philanthropy within your business affect the culture around your employees?
So, a couple things. So, one of our core values within our organization is community. So, again, serving the community is just as important as doing business in the community. So, providing opportunities for our organization to serve as a group. And then also, whether it is, we're going to volunteer at the Humane Society and help them catalog items for their Christmas in July. We're going to help at the Soapbox Derby. We're going to help with She Builds and kind of providing volunteer time, going to help at our battered women's shelter, so helping do some repairs there, painting, doing yard work. We are not super handy in the insurance and HR space, but we try to. We are coachable. And then also, I have really amazing employees that are involved in other places. So they're serving on boards, they're volunteering with an organization. So what we do at AUI and Clarity is we track all of our service hours individually, and then we create a community impact report once a year. So we send it out to our clients and say, thank you for some of the things that you are helping us do, because by supporting us and being our client, you enable us to do this in the community. But then the individual who has the most service hours, I give them $1,000 donation to the charity of their choice. So it's not just about encouraging what they're doing, it's about also advancing their work and what's passionate for them. And so we did something a year ago called Give Something Away Day. And so while it was, I'm going to write a check to a couple of organizations, I want you to tell me, team members, who are the organizations that you think really deserve that check, and tell me why, and let's celebrate them. So it's again just building that culture of giving back, and it filters down. So yeah, we're caring about the community, but when we're also caring about the community, we're caring about the clients that we have. So it continues to build that relationship within our organization that isn't just community focused, it's also customer focused. So you're continuing to radiate that care across all lines of business and across all lines in the community.
And I'm sure it spills over into your company culture too, like
Absolutely.
everybody is more on a positive
Mhm.
framework, that they're all working together on something. So thank you for sharing that. So as we wrap up, I usually have my core 3. I already asked the first one, but you wanted to talk about that. I didn't get a chance to ask. Another is how about books? Like I almost shudder asking this question anymore, because when I ask, what's a book you recommend, everybody turns around and says, well, I've got 20 of them here. Which one do you want me to recommend? I'm like, well, just pick the one that resonates the most. That's fine.
Yeah, I would say most recently, The Gap in the Gain. So I think Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan wrote
Mhm.
it. I think it's last year, so 2022. That's been really helpful for me, and just kind of that perspective. As someone who's a natural achiever, it's really easy for me to say, well, I didn't achieve what my ultimate goal was of X, but I forget to look backwards and go, how far have I come? So that's probably most recently the most important book that I've read. So I would say listen to that, and then also, if you have time, I would say listen to. Jamie Gruber did a podcast with Ben Hardy,
Mhm.
listen to that podcast, because it wasn't just listening to that book. Because I did Who Not How, I did Gap and Gain, I just did 10x is easier than 2x.
Mhm.
But it was listening to that podcast and knowing that you don't always know what's going on in the background. That
Mhm.
perspective of that podcast after I read those books was eye opening to me. And that,
Mm.
sometimes relationships end and it's okay. And you can see the trajectory of those three books and going, oh my gosh, this is going to be a lifetime of work. And it's not going to be. And so, really
Mm.
understanding what that backstory is was super helpful for me as a business owner. And then as someone who's making entrepreneurial decisions. It took me a while to realize that I am an entrepreneur. So, kind of looking at what that trajectory could be, and the fact that you always have permission to change your mind. Because oftentimes, for
Mm.
me, being a type A personality who's super driven, I don't have the capacity to change. I can't do it. Again, that's why we have
Right.
reluctant resilience. So, I will do it if I have to go kicking and screaming, but I'm not always going to do it until you make me. It was really eye opening for me to listen to that podcast after I listened to the Gap in the Game.
I just wanna touch on something you said about not changing your mind, about being so set and giving yourself permission to course correct.
Yeah.
And how many of us, like, just go into this, I made this decision, now I have to go forward, but a lot of us just don't wanna change because we feel like, "Oh, well, I failed. So if I have to course correct and change that, then I failed on going back on whatever this decision is." Now, that it's a fuzzy gray area, but I'm glad you brought that up because we
Mhm.
tend to just put ourselves in the box and it's like, "Boom, I made that decision. That's it. I'm never gonna change it now." So,
Yeah.
appreciate you mentioning that. So, what's one small step that someone can do today that it's gonna help them change their tomorrow that you wanna leave us with?
So I heard a quote from Sharon Lechter a couple of months ago, and what she said was, to worry is to pray for things that you do not wish to happen. And
Mm,
so I would say, if there's a small step that you can make, it would be reframing your mindset. So as you're starting to worry, to go, why am I praying for something that I don't want to happen? And so that has been really helpful for me in the last, let's say, 6 months, especially as I've walked through some things where I don't always know what the answers are. So one of the things that I wanted to do this year was to really test myself and kind of, you know, lean into fear as someone who's been driven by anxiety the majority of her life, kind of leaning into things that I don't know all the answers to, but I'm going to figure it out. So I would say that's a small step. And I guess the other small step, which I continue to hear from people, but I don't always believe, is that no one cares as much as you think they do. And the minute that you realize that, you become more powerful. And so that,
mhm,
between those two things, really working on not worrying and reframing my mindset, just every time I
mhm,
feel that, it's like, wait a second, why are we praying for that to happen? We don't want that to happen. What can we do to make it? How can we reframe that? But then also
mhm.
not worrying about, what is everybody thinking? There's a lot of self judgment. I think a fair amount of times when you're an entrepreneur and you put yourself out there, especially if you're doing content creation, you're doing podcasting like you're doing. It's, is anybody going to like this? And it's like, yes, they're going to be fine. And don't worry, they're not going to worry about it nearly as much as you do. So calm your
I'm
crap.
glad you say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, calm your crap down. I really like that, and, I'm glad you said that because I edit all my own podcasts, and then I go into the editing phase, and I'm listening, and I go, "I don't want anybody to hear me say this." So I take out about 90% of what I say, and then everyone's like, "That was a great episode." I said,
Yes.
"Yeah," because I took most of me out of it.
Well, and permission to just listen to what you're telling yourself.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm saying
Yeah.
this also, I'm saying it to me. I'm not
Oh,
saying that I have
sure.
it figured out. I do not. I fail every day.
Sure.
I'm a work in progress. But if I continue to say it to other people, maybe I'll also listen to it myself. Because, I mean, one of my
Yeah.
coaches says, it takes 10 times for you to hear something. I feel like for me, it takes about 10,000 on some of these things that are hard ingrained in me. So we're like 5,065. So, I mean, I've got some more to go.
Well, that's okay, and I wanna encourage you because the good news and I've been doing a lot of mindset reading and thinking about how the brain functions and the neuroscience, and you actually can't reprogram your brain. It is what you tell yourself, and your brain doesn't know the difference. So,
No.
when you start putting empowering sentences and, empowering thoughts and beliefs on yourself, then and you keep repeating them, eventually they will manifest, and brings us back to what we mentioned at the beginning, what you focus on expands.
Yes. Absolutely.
and that we can become that which we want to be, and that just to believe that and to put it into practice and to take those practical steps to get us to get there. Chrissy, thank you so much for the gift of your time. This was amazing. I enjoyed the entire conversation. So I will stick in the show notes unless you want to give a quick shout to how people can reach out to you if you'd like.
Yeah,
Go
sure.
ahead and do
So
that.
LinkedIn and Instagram, it's Chrissy Myers, CEO. And then as far, you can always email me, cmyers@auiinfo.com. And then our two websites right now, AUI Info is for AUI, clarityhr.com is for clarity. And I'm just looking forward to connecting and seeing more people. But LinkedIn and Instagram are probably the best places to kind of find me for content. So if you don't like
Perfect.
LinkedIn, because some people are like, oh, it's too professional, don't want to deal with it. I'm in B2B, so I live on LinkedIn. I am also on Instagram. So thanks, Sue.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. You have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.